in row. Always glad to welcome them, Wallace Ford and the energetic Dr. Veronica Odogalanya, who is also behind this. I thank the Center for Business and Economic Research for giving me the opportunity to present. As you're all aware, I mean, the COVID pandemic, not the first in the world, but in my own memory, one that actually shook the world up more than any in recent memory. And so one of the things that the COVID pandemic did was to shake up the economic systems, practically drove the world underground. And so legitimate concerns arose out of the pandemic, and this is where I'm coming from. So essentially what I've done in this study is to follow the trend of events and ask ourselves, will this completely overturn or overhaul the trading systems or the trading relationships, not trading systems, but trading relationships around the globe after the pandemic. And definitely there were reactions and responses that were understandable and I would say legitimate under the circumstances. So as you can see, the initial COVID, or initially the COVID was recognized and there was all this broadcast that some new virus was in China. And just, as an aside, I mean, we thought, well, it was a Chinese problem. After all, the Ebola virus came and was limited to West Africa. This is not the first coronavirus. The MERS, the SARS, and you name it, they came and they went, or at least they were contained. So initially, the COVID was more or less ignored. But suddenly, the COVID gave the world a shock. Travelers from China that entered the United States, by February, there were a few cases. And then between the 1st of February and the second week of March, suddenly this thing swept across the world like wildfire. As you can see from the chart here, there was a rapid growth between April and between April 2020 and May 2020, you can see the curve went up sharply. And I kind of like did a few numerical charts just to see how the COVID developed. First of all, the world, spread around the world, but the United States became the epicenter very, very soon. As you can see from the tables and charts, depending on when you begin, either in April or begin at the end of May. But the virus spread very rapidly. Now, the first reaction that that came across was that travel around the world was shut down. And even within countries, within the United States, travel was practically shut down. And one of the first things that happened was the proposed lockdown in Wuhan, China. Personally, I thought it was a joke. I mean, how could you lock down an entire region of the country? But then very soon, all of us went through lockdown. Now, so what happened with the lockdowns? There was decline in economic activity across the world as businesses, restaurants shut down, schools shut down, and there was quite a bit of decrease in, decrease in economic activity, increased unemployment. Businesses shut down more or less, especially in the travel and restaurant and services industries. Retail establishments limited the way they operated, and unemployment in the United States sharply rose to about 15%. Economic output declined about 25%. But more important was that supply chains were disrupted across the world. From within countries, supply chains were disrupted, but also between nations, supply chains were disrupted. I have a few statistics about the economic impact in Europe. Unemployment rose, and to my surprise, unemployment wasn't that bad in Europe, but it was terrible in the United States. And I have some statistics to demonstrate that quite a bit, produce some indexes. And what's interesting is that the impact of economic downturn was uneven across sectors, due to occupational segregation, especially if you read the history of occupational segregation, the areas that employ women and the areas that employ minorities in the United States were hardest hit. You can see I use the managerial occupations as an index. And you can see that in some areas, let me see, in the hospitality industry, the index compared to managerial occupations was about 500, about 5 times the impact on certain occupations, and sometimes 3 times the impact compared to managerial areas. And I mean, those are just the local impacts, even though my topic is about international effects. And so one of the things that you will see is that world tourism, about 174 million jobs were lost around the world. And countries, developing countries like Latin America and the Caribbean were impacted the most. Now, because of these supply chain disruptions, I would say understandable concerns about security-related industries arose. And so what would happen when something like this happens, we were to import, what do you call that again, that we wear on our faces, face masks. I tried to order face masks personally, and lo and behold, they were to come from China. So how about defense-related industries? How about industries that are critical to national security? Those gave rise to concerns about what would happen in the future, and just in the event there is trouble. And so China could blackmail everybody if they wanted to. As you can see, for example, in February 2020, the lockdown wiped out about $50 billion of world trade. And this is from the Institute of Strategic Studies around July. Global trade plunged by 27%. And there was, there were even worse reactions. So the other issue that arose was, of course, the impact on foreign direct investment. Transaction costs escalated as border checkpoints also sort of increased, and so escalated the cost of international business. And so the concern is then, would all of these reactions lead to more isolation? One thing that happened, though, was that when you come to look at what happened, when the COVID began in March, April, May 2020, the United States, for example, had 33,000 cases a day. And we thought it was going to start coming down. Suddenly, there was a second surge, and then a third surge. Now, as the surges became even worse, populations began to get uncomfortable about the lockdown. People were suffering. And in the process, what happened was we found ways around having to do business. This is what happened. So when United States went to 75,000 a day, which was worse than the 33,000, and went to 200,000 a day, which was even worse, we had devised means of working around COVID. And then, of course, the vaccine was introduced. And so my feeling is that,
2 minutes, Dr. Egbe. 2 minutes,
yes,
please.
I'm going to conclude. My feeling is that we're going to actually devise more efficient ways of globalization because technologies have been developed to resolve some of the issues. And I'm going to go to those conclusions. For example, artificial intelligence could help accelerate, business, and you have smart algorithms that enable things like even what do you call it? Medical attention to be given, diagnosis. You have telehealth. As for education, you no longer have to travel to England to go and get English education or to America to get American education. We now have e-learning. There's remote work that people now use. And as an educator and also an administrator, what I suddenly realized is that we think that students want to come back to the classroom. I'm looking at my enrollment. The enrollment is telling me a different story, that the online classes are filling up and the face-to-face classes, students are not particularly enthusiastic about it. And so there has been recovery since the pandemic, and but the recovery has been uneven. Just as an aside note, I see the travel industry, things are going to change. The structure of the economies are going to change, but world trade is not going to really decline as badly as we anticipate. As a matter of fact, there have been growth. Travel services will be down and will continue to be down, especially the cruise industry. I love to cruise. I was about to get into a cruise in 2020 when all of this hit. So I don't know when I'm going to get into my cruise. I'm still afraid of the cramped quarters in cruise ships, but I'll definitely brave it one day. So that brings my presentation to a conclusion. I wish I had a little bit more time to go through all my statistics, but I think I have sort of like made some of the points. Thank you very much.